Chapter 3, Kill or Be Killed. Cush started to speak, but noticed Mammalean looking up the road. A large group of men was headed toward them on horseback, rushing toward them. She stopped the wagon and looked on to see if there was anyone in the crowd she might know. "Mammalean, what are you doing out here?" a man named Miguel echoed. Mammalean leaned back. "No, Miguel, what are all y'all going in such a hurry?" Miguel replied, "The war has started. An estimated 500 or so anacondas are on this side of the river. We found a few sky crafts and hover boats on our side. You should make haste and stay put. The anacondas are trying to take back the Mississippi Bridge, and a few are trying to flank us on both sides. We're posting up every mile from Lake Providence to as far south as Newellton. Supplies are being stored from Lake Village to St. Joseph. Mammalean, we are going to need you." Mammalean interrupted, "Say no more," as Miguel turned his horse around. "If you see anything, I mean anything, in the sky, shoot it down and send the word out to everyone." Mammalean shook her head. "Oh, okay, son, you take it easy, and be careful out there, yeah." "Here." Miguel slapped his horse on its backside. "Yes, ma'am," and rushed to catch up with his men. War, battles, conflicts, whatever you want to call them, they are so meaningless at times, but all during history, we have had to fight for something, I guess. Mammalean paused, "But if it wasn't for war, I wouldn't be here in this beautiful place. My first husband sent us here hoping to go to Arizona eventually. Some went, and some didn't. My husband was sent along with the elderly and children under 15 before the Great War. We loved it here so much that a few of us just stayed when it was time to return. There's so much I want to tell you, but I can't, until you are enlightened." Cush said, "Your first husband?" Mammalean paused. "I'll tell you that story when you get enlightened. Anyhow, in this county and all over this globe, we as a race of people had to fight for our freedom for a long time, but we stood tall. Mentally, physically, and spiritually, we have overcome great adversities. Our family had to deal with genocide, and endured the horrifying ways of enslavement on this continent. We were sexually exploited and abused by our," she held her fingers, gesturing quotations, "white masters. Our people had to fight, like Sabaoth of Ethiopia, who helped abolish slavery, and the fearless Wanyenyekevu, who led the Ashanti War, against the British. Men like Taki, the Ghanaian king, who led a slave rebellion in Jamaica, or even King Bayano, the Mandinka king who escaped slavery and fought off the Spanish for several years." Shaking her head in disbelief, Mammalean sat there in silence. Mammalean felt something in her spirit, and turned to Cush. "What ails you, child?" Cush, in deep thought, hesitated for a second before saying, "I don't know. I see one side of my family as fierce warriors, my mother's side, and y'all have very spiritual, I guess the word is endowment or something like that. I can't explain it yet. In which both families have united into something that, too, I cannot explain. Mammalean, when I first met you, I felt something I could not explain, but it was a good feeling. Do you remember when we sat under that weeping willow, back then, when you had that white and green table set?" Mammalean shook her head. "Yeah, baby." As she listened, Cush continued, "Big Ma, I've known since I was a baby. I felt her loving, caring personality, which I have always felt in her. I met you later on in life. I don't remember how old I was, but I remember being under that tree when I met you. I felt like I was in a spiritual place with you, which is also something I cannot explain." Mammalean looked at Cush. "Keep on living, just keep on living. I tell you these stories and little tidbits, to learn from them, and understand where you come from. We all do, it's part of what a family does. Remember when I told you about the old countries and how they kept up with their family tree and ancestry? Well, we, as a people, did not care who we were, because it was stolen from us. Hidden from us. Why was it hidden? I believe it was for us to find it, so we could appreciate it. Because we had a purpose, a prophecy in our bloodline. He had to see we were special and to respect the gift given to us. The deceiver hid it from us, but we had to recognize it for Sabaoth to finish his work. Our pride in ourselves had to be respected and revered. Your two families knew each other before the exodus from Arizona, but my son and your uncle became the best friends as the years passed, They used to call them two brothers from different mothers. And then your mother and father married. That's when we became one with you and your brother and sister. Sabaoth destined it, and it is, period. Now say it with me, keep on living. Cush looked at Mammalean, and they both said, keep on living. Then Mammalean said, as you get older, it'll all make sense. Mammalean and Cush continued north on Highway 65 for half a mile before Mammalean shouted, "Oh Lord, I forgot that quick." Grabbing an instrument and placing it in her ear, she tapped it a few times, and seconds later, it beeped. "Valley, Valley, you there?" Valley replied, "Yes, Kakahoya, go ahead." Mammalean replied, "This Mississippi thing is getting worse. Take all the meats from McCall that are already packaged and get them ready to go to all my locations along Highway 17. Don't. Repeat, do not go past Highway 4. Whatever you have ready, start sending them out first thing in the morning. Start at Lake Village on one end and start at Waterproof on the other." Valley came back on the radio saying, "There are men here asking." Mammalean interrupted, "Give them whatever they need, I'll try to get back before nightfall. I got to take care of my business in Lake Province before I head back." Valley replied, "Over and out." Cush looked at Mammalean in amusement and pride. "You got electronic devices too?" Mammalean said, "Some of us do, and some of us don't. I rarely use mine, but I keep them handy, like in situations like this. If I hadn't had it, they would have to have waited until I got back, or I would have had to turn around, but this is important that I have to do, to me anyways." Mammalean grabs the reins, slaps against the horses' backs, and shouts, "Giddy up." Ha! Racing down the highway, they rush toward Lake Providence. They arrived at Cane Ridge Road until its dead end and walked through a wooded area about a quarter of a mile to a small house, just north of Round Lake, Donatella. Mammalean shouted, "Kakahoya? Baby, I was about to shoot you. What are you doing out here in all this confusion? Who's that you got there with ya?" It was Mammalean's sister-in-law, Papa Joe's sister. "It's Cush, baby, and your eyes are gone too. Where are your spectacles?" Mammalean said. "Cush. I ain't seen him since that boy was a baby. Come here, child, let your great-aunt take a look at ya." Cush walked up to Donatella. "Hello? How are you?" Mammalean politely interrupted, "Baby, I meant to stay for a spell, but they done got this thing going on, and I got to rush back home. Tell your grandchildren to help unload the wagon so we can get back home." Donatella shouted, "Bella. Drew. Y'all go get the rest of y'all, and get the stuff off Auntie Lean's wagon." 13 children bolted out the door, rushing past Mammalean. "Hey, Auntie Lean," they said as they passed her. Mammalean shouted as they all vanished into the woods, "All that stuff is y'all, so be careful with those eggs." Donatella looked at Mammalean, "Thanks for the food and stuff, we sure enough needed it, y'all come on in. That wagon will be unloaded in 2.3 seconds. We can talk for a spell before you head out." Mammalean looked at Cush and smiled, "Go see your little gal friend and be back within the hour. Here." Mammalean throws Cush an old samurai she had strapped around her back. "You be careful, ya hear?" He rushed to the wagon, and unhitched one of the horses from the wagon. When he reached Highway 596, he felt someone was watching him. The feeling got stronger as he headed south on the road. He stopped the horse and got off. 6 men walked out of the bushes. They were not Wakatilians by their clothing and had on rubber-like outfits, and each had a stitch of their own. Cush looked back and saw 2 more men behind him. He took the samurai from around his neck and gripped the sword tightly as he stood in his stance. At that moment, Yael appeared but took a seat on a nearby log. One of the men tried to grab Cush, but he directed the sword in such a manner it cut the man's hand off. While flipping, he quickly turned, severing the other man's head. As the first man stood there screaming in pain, Cush simultaneously kicked him while slicing his throat just inches from taking off his head. Covered in blood, Cush took the samurai and slashed it in the air as the blood from the 2 men was forced from the blade. What the fuck is this shit, a child? You mean to tell me a child killed my men like they were ants, said the man who stood among the other men in front of Cush. He pointed at the other men and shouted, kill that motherfucking child. Now. Cush was insulted by the fact the man called him a child. Child. A child, I am Cush, son of Darwashi, heir to Samuel, descendant of Abuxagan, son of Wanyenyekevu of the Tallulah clan, and I am a man, not a child, of the almighty Sabaoth. Cush then stood with his feet pressed firmly against the ground as the 4 men ran up to Cush, 2 on each side of him. 1 man from each side tried to pass him so they could surround him, but Cush quickly stopped them. Kicking 1 man in the face, he turned and mule-kicked the other in the groin. The blade from Cush's sword slid through the man's midsection like a knife through butter. The man grabs his intestines as he went into shock, while Cush decapitated the man he kicked in the groin. The other 2 men pulled out some kind of weapon from their person. Cush cut one of the men's hands off, and the other man, he carved out a chunk of his shoulder blade, causing them to drop their weapons. Cush thrust his blade into the man's heart while twisting it in a 180-degree turn, killing him instantly. Killing all the men, the leader who stood in the back rushed Cush. Cush heard an object pass him with great force, and the leader of the men fell dead, before he could reach him. Cush turns and sees Mammalean, who had thrown a star that penetrated the man's skull, dead center between his eyes. I ain't got time for this. Shouted Mammalean, it's time to go home and set our men up for battle, they are counting on us. Cush shockingly asked, how did you know? Mammalean said, I felt them. I'm drawn to your light, like a moth to a flame. It is time for your enlightenment. However, true enlightenment is up to you. Cush approached Yael, why is it you did not help me? Yael stood up, my job is to teach and help when commanded. I taught Wanyenyekevu, and he has taught you and your people all so well. By the way, you are just as good as he was. The only thing, pain consumed him on his first kill. Yael looked over toward Mammalean, shaking his head with approval as Mammalean inspected the dead men, it's time for your enlightenment. There's so much I need to tell ya, when you do get enlightened. Turning to Cush, she smiled, oh. And remind me not to call you a child. Yael smiled, and then he just vanished. Cush did not think about it until Yael had mentioned it. It was indeed his first kill, and he stood there in shock as Mammalean rushed towards him. Cush! Cush! He saw he was indeed covered in blood. He stood there for a moment. I took someone's life away from them. Mammalean was in deep thought, I hear tell it, but I think that's the first time I have, or anyone, as far as I'm concerned, has ever truly seen Yael smile. Pulling the star from the man's head. Besides that, son, have your father ever told you, it's kill or be killed? I might be your first kill, but it definitely won't be your last. Now come on here, let's go. Mammalean examined the bodies of the dead men again, and noticed the suits they were wearing. It makes sense, all this water around these parts, the men are hiding in the lakes and rivers. They quickly returned to the wagon, said their goodbyes to Donatella, made a few stops to report what they saw, and were escorted by a group of warriors as they headed back to Tallulah. Sorry, you weren't able to see your little friend, but as you see, things have changed for the worst, Mammalean said as they headed back home. Cush smiled, it's okay. They reached Tallulah later that night, and were approached by Valley. Cush and Mammalean got out of the wagon, and Cush turned and handed Mammalean the samurai, shaking her head, no, it belongs to you anyways, kinda neat, huh? Cush said. It's an inch or so too long. Mammalean said, oh, I'm sorry, son, I thought you knew, pass it to me. Passing her the samurai, she said. This belonged to your grandfather. When we became known as Mestizos, we had our difference. I think it was a conversation between Aldhib and Wanyenyekevu, because it sounds like something Aldhib would have said. You see, Anacatis love their meat raw and shit, they call it rare, and Wanyenyekevu and most Wakatilians wanted our meat double killed as they called it. Cush interrupted, double killed, what's that? Mammalean laughed, Wakatilians are used to our meat being well done, and they came here cooking raw ass meat. Aldhib asked Wanyenyekevu, what do you want me to do, kill it twice? Wanyenyekevu said, hell yeah, kill that bitch twice. Hence, double kill. Mammalean laughed. Anyways, not too long after that, he created these swords for the people started to customize their weapons and clothing to fit them. Now, look. She twisted the handle, a smaller blade appeared from the chamber. This was the design that Wanyenyekevu had, and all blades are made like this. Now, each family put their own little twist on them when they came to Tallulah. Some wanted lighter weight blades, and some wanted stronger metals, but they were all basically the same. Plus, this one here has the blood of Mshika on it. It can kill any so-called Abenian with one thrust. You don't have to penetrate it through their body, just a simple touch, and they are gone for good, in a puff of smoke that smells like death itself. Cush said, I didn't know Mshika's blood was on it. I heard about these samurai, but never seen one. Mammalean smiled, if it's old, most of them do, around here. As she touched her san, she turned to Cush, okay now, come by first thing in the morning, and we will get you those stories you wanted, but for now, Mammalean got to rest these old bones of mine. Cush smiled, you mean mature, as he walked off playing with the samurai. Mammalean shouts to Cush, Cush. He shouted back, ma'am? Mammalean shouts, keep on, what? With a big smile, he shouted back, keep on living, Mammalean. Keep on living. Mammalean smiled, as Valley stood there patiently, awaiting Mammalean's attention. It was a madhouse around here, but things are just now getting straightened out. Mammalean asked, what all has been done? Valley replied, the warriors came and helped us with so much. We have already sent wagons as far off north, to Lake Village, Aston, and Jenny, and as far south as Waterproof, St. Joseph, and Lake Bruin. By the way, they took Highway 4 near Winsboro. Shikut, Eudora, Kilbourne, Newelton, and Winsboro. The warriors have a plan for protecting each load themselves until they reach their destination, as you ordered. 4 cases of all meats, 2 cases of all fruits, herbs, and vegetables, and a case of essential and infused oils go to each location. Mammalean was proud of Vala's initiative. You are good for something, old man. Smiling, he said, you're the only one old around here. I saw you in Noah's yearbook right before the flood, looking like a peacock without feathers, you old hag. Both laughed, and Mammalean said, oh, okay. Valley continued, by the morning, the Tensas River shipment, which is the primary base, will be ready. All that's left is Terry, Oak Grove, and Delhi. I will go out in the morning with those orders. Mammalean said, what you going to do, old man, throw sticks at them? Bring your ass over here and organize these loads. I have a list of things for them and will send them on their way. When she got through with all the orders and requests, she didn't have much left, but the harvest was due in a week, so she whispered to herself as she was looking toward heaven, Sabaoth is able. Miriam, Cush's mother, woke him up early the next day. Cush, get up now, you and your brother, run over Big Ma's house and help her harvest some of those herbs. She's been fussing at me for about a week now. Cush's oldest sister, Abir, was already up helping Miriam, placing plates on the kitchen table while their mother was finishing breakfast. Darweshi, their father, had been gone for months now, fighting alongside Samuel. During times like these, it was up to the boys to take care of the chores around the house. But everyone within the community was helping one another. Walid and Cush sat down at the kitchen table as Cush complained, I was supposed to help Mammalean with her shipments. Walid teased him, Mammalean probably got up way before you and is probably finished by now. She gets up before the roosters crow, just like Big Ma. She doesn't need you, little boy. Miriam looked at Walid, what I done told you about messing with your brother, Walid. Plus, y'all ain't going to be up there long 'cause it's herbs, not cotton. Miriam turned to Cush, you can go over there, when you finished. Cush's eyes lit up as he gobbled up his food and ran out the door shouting at his brother. I'll meet you there. Cush ran up Big Ma's porch and started knocking on the door. Who that? Knocking on my door like they done gone crazy. Big Ma shouted. Cush, trying to catch his breath, it's me, Big Ma. Mama told us to help you in the garden. I'm trying to hurry up so I can go over Mammaleans. Big Ma looked out the door. Who's us, boy? Cush smiled. I left Walid behind. He was still eating. Mammalean smiled. Okay, good. I need to take some of my herbs over there. You can do that for me. Come on in. I got to put my jelly on my jelly cakes. Cush's mouth became watery. Can I have a piece? Big Ma smiling. After you take care of my garden, I've just been cutting off the flowers, before they flower anyways. Never let your herbs flower until the end of the season so you can grow more. The seeds are in the flowers, and if you do let them flower, they don't taste the same. Some of them anyways. They talked for a bit, before Walid came to the door. Gone and let your brother in. Walid went straight into the kitchen. Morning, Big Ma. Jelly cake. As he reached for a piece of jelly cake, Big Ma slapped his hands. Get your greedy butt outta here, those ain't for you. Cush laughed as Walid rubbed his hand from the pain. Big Ma, I just wanted something sweet after breakfast. Big Ma was refilling the sugar jar and placing it on the counter when she smiled. You ask, boy, everything ain't for ya. You know, it's because of this here sugar, Louisiana became part of the United States. Walid said, I thought it was the low price for the land. Cush said, no, it was more than that. France built a lot of colonies in the Americas, trying to get rich off of Europe's tastes for it along with indigo and other commodities from Saint-Domingue, before we knew it as Haiti, which was the sugar capital of the world. They controlled 40% of Britain and France's sugar and 60% of its coffee, which was the main and only reason for their brutal slave trade. Cush leaned against the kitchen sink. Slavery life expectancy was short and miserable. They died from two things, and neither one was old age. Yellow fever, and their brutal treatment. Their population turned over every 20 years. Just like in America, their slaves were the bottom rung of society and were simply expendable commodities. Big Ma interrupted. They were not allowed to vote, until some free blacks began organizing, and the French government granted them that right. But they refused to recognize their laws, causing violence and revolt. The slaves killed their masters and occupied and burned their plantations. France eventually abolished slavery. Under Toussaint Louverture, slaves took over the entire island of Hispaniola, including Saint-Domingue and its neighbor Santo Domingo. Cush politely interrupted, yeah, but Napoleon couldn't stand the idea of the island being controlled by former slaves. He plotted to take the island back and reinstate slavery, but failed. Napoleon realized his dream of a French empire in the Americas might be doomed. He'd planned to send troops to Louisiana to take over the colony, which he had received from the Spanish, through a secret treaty, hoping to use the territory as a trading venue for the commodities produced there. But his plan was useless, if Haiti was under the control of the slaves. Thomas Jefferson and his cabinet didn't want the French, so close to the United States, and used the revolt as a bargaining piece. They approached the French with an offer to buy New Orleans. To their surprise, France offered to sell them the entire territory of Louisiana instead, because Haiti had become an independent country ran by the victorious former slaves. But though the victory eliminated slavery in Haiti, it ironically doubled the size of the U.S., which increased slavery in this country. Big Ma shook her head in agreeance, as she thought for a while. Okay, Cush, it's getting late now. You take old Gemini out to Cacahoyas and give her some of these supplies, while me and Walid do the gardening. We ain't going to be that long. Walid and Big Ma grabbed some tools, while Cush loaded up the saddlebags on Gemini's back and headed north. Cush spoke to Gemini. Gemini, sorry you couldn't go to war with Dan-Daddy, Big Ma said. He said, you're getting too old. Gemini made a strange noise and shook his head in disagreement. I'm glad you're not gone with him so we can hang out more. Gemini nodded. Cush shouted, come on, boy, let's show Dan-Daddy he's wrong about you. You ain't old. You're mature. Gemini picked up speed and raced to Mammalean's house. As Cush arrived, music was playing, and the warriors were praising Sabaoth as they began to depart.
Is my living in vain? Is my giving in vain? Is my praying in vain? not. It's not all in vain. No. To love the road. Here's the color game.
Bracodo, bracodo, pata. Bracodo, bracodo, pata.
Mammalean saw them, Gemini and Cush. Fancy seeing you two together. Cush smiled, Mammalean, I came as quickly as possible. But I had to help Big Ma, but she sent some supplies for ya and some jelly cake. Mammalean smiled, sit down and have a piece with me. Walking over to a basket, she looked at Gemini. Here, Gemini, I got you some fresh green apples. Sitting down and eating the cake, Mammalean said, now, let's see, where were we? The last place I left off, Deke and Dasinga had just officially met, and he spent all night at work telling her about the Torah? Cush said, yes, I remember. Mammalean said. Well, one night, while waiting for her to come to work, he happily approached her car. He walked up to her and opened her door. She took one leg out and paused, then she took the other leg and stood up. Are you wearing those rainbow panties for me? He said. She blushed, yes, I am. Dasinga could always make her smile or laugh, and it always delighted her to see him. Dasinga was always serious, and many saw that he was a little perky and always smiling at work, but he had never seen the look many of the men were giving him, but he didn't care either. One day Decay said, these men are all talking bad about you in front of me. He simply replied, some men are like women and simply are jealous, they will get over it after a while. Nevertheless, after a while, never came. He overheard some men and coworkers saying, how is it, a simple-minded man like that gets such a beautiful girl? However, he kept on about his business. Dasinga complained one night about how he was hungry, tired, and didn't want to work that night, and Decay said, I get off early tonight. If you can come over, I can cook you something to eat. Dasinga said, let me make a round or two, and I'll be there around midnight. He made his rounds and grabbed the keys from one of the security guards. Cover me for a while. I have to do something important, and be back around 1 or 2. The other security guard said, cool. Back then, you had to have a driver's license to drive any vehicle, unlike today, and so that was one strike against him, driving without a license, and he drove to Deke's house, and they talked and laughed. By this time, it was 2 in the morning for he had lost track of time. Deke said, where's my manners? Let me cook something to eat. Looking in the refrigerator, she found some frozen chicken breast. When I said frozen, it was hard as a rock. She asked, you like fried chicken? She took the frozen chicken and covered it in flour, and I mean no seasoning, just flour, and Dasinga sat there and watched with amusement. He said nothing for fear of making her feel embarrassed, until the grease started to smell burnt, and he asked politely, do you know what you're doing, baby? Smiling but also having a serious look on her face, yes, I do. Dasinga began to laugh inside but quickly took over and turned down the fire. Baby, you're going to burn these damn apartments down with your kind of cooking, and the grease has been hot enough a long time ago? She dropped that frozen chicken breast in the oil, and it just started popping and cracking, and smoke quickly filled the room. Dasinga opened the door to the apartment as the smoke detector went off. He took it down and saw that it embarrassed her because the chicken was black as midnight and raw in the middle. Dasinga, trying to make her feel a little better, one thing I know, you like me, as much as I like you, but ain't no way in hell I'm going to eat that shit. What is that called, blackened chicken? They laughed as the smoke cleared the room, and Decay said, why didn't you stop me, if you knew I was doing it wrong? He smiled, I did. Kind of, I asked you, did you know what you were doing? You're from the islands and I thought that maybe, just maybe, you guys had a secret recipe. She looked at him, okay, no, I didn't. She laughed, well, we can talk for a spell. Shaking his head, yes, we can talk, but leave the cooking to me, from now on. After a small conversation about music and writing, Decay asks, can you recite a poem for me since you write? You talking about me and my cooking, let's me see if you can write? Dasinga insists that his book of songs and poetry was at home. She smiled, if you're good, just make one up. Dasinga sees the moon shining brightly through the window behind her and says, "Midnight lover." A sparkle of the moon's rays shines upon your lips. Your eyes glitter as I move toward your hips. A beautiful smile comes upon your face. The night air blows, so gentle against our bodies. As the temperature rises, I stare, you stare, into each other's eyes. Heartbeats races, sweat begins to pour. As you and I making love, in the great outdoors. The air, that whistles through the trees, are our covers. Midnight moon, midnight breeze. Baby, I'm your midnight lover. Dasinga looked at the time. Oh shit. I'm going to get fired, let me get the hell out of here. It's almost 5 in the morning. Decay with an enticing smile, you going to leave me here, without a goodnight kiss? Dasinga replied, hell to the nah. He walks up to her, grabs her by the base of her back, and gives her a long, hard kiss, and she kisses him back. The passion grew, and he reached down and started rubbing her ass, and she started taking off his uniform. As he undressed her slowly, they became overwhelmed with passion. She grabbed him by the hand and led them to an air mattress she had on the floor. Dasinga said to Deke, "It's been over 10 years since I've felt this way toward anyone and over 2 years since I have had sex." She smiled, "It's okay." Ironically, an R&B group was on the radio called H-Town and the song playing was called Knocking the Boots.
Hey yo, check the verse.
Last night I thought back when we made good love, listening to some Marvin Gaye all night long. Now I want that whole thing back, make these moments once again perfect. So won't you do it for us, babe? Good love and body rocking, knocking boots all night long. Hey, making love until we're tired to the break of dawn. But come on, and turn the lights down and let me get on it.
Mammalean laugh. Anyway, they had sex, but it was over before it began. Both of them were lying there sweating and out of breath, before she got up after a moment of talking, and she grabbed him by the hand and she took him to the bedroom, and they had mad and passionate sex. Dasinga smiled, "Baby, that was much better." She agreed. They took a shower together and bathed each other. Knowing he was fired, he stayed and wrote her a poem before he left. Make you wet. Close your eyes, visualized with your mind, frozen in time. A mood that captures your innermost feelings, your innermost mind. Picture this, walking out of the shower with water dripping from your body. A hot shower that you and I just finished. I take your body, still dripping wet with water. With hot baby oil, massage your body from head to toe. Hearing you say, "I can't take no mo." Nevertheless, I continue. Slowly, I start with the feet. Massaging your bod, yes, a feeling comes over us as being complete. Baby, how does that feel? Baby, the feeling you are feeling is real. Rubbing my hands together, to create a soft, gentle heat. I close in on your innermost thighs. As my hands reach toward your precious jewel, a hard stiff erection comes over me. But I must continue with my display, 'cause the best part of lovemaking is foreplay. Slowly. Gently. Smoothly. Work my way to your sweet stomach. Then to your beautiful breast. Must confess, I'm doing my best. I massage until my stiff hard erection begins to throb. The sensation caused me to kiss your nipples until they stand to attention. Until they, too, are rock-ass hard. First the left, then the right. I then dim the lights as we continue our flight. Hearing you moan as I groan. As we make love. Being alone, a tear falls from your eyes, then I realized, it is time for your surprise. Slowly, I slip my fingers around your precious jewels, before I grab a mouthful, as I lick around. Until a pearl is found, and I hear you make a joyous sound. Softly, I feel your juices meeting with mine. However, it is not yet time. Grabbing your click, with my tongue. I hear you say, oh, baby, this is fun. I know now, I didn't do anything wrong. Matter of fact, I hear you singing a lovely song. I ask you the title. You said, you reply, that it was for me, entitled Maya Johnny. That is me, as you can see. So, I take my stiff hard erection, rubbing it gently against your thighs. I move into your gentle insides, your precious jewels. Feel good to me. Circular motion, forward, and then gently back. As I caress your hair, your neck, your ass. Seconds pass, then minutes, even hours. As we are captivated by our emotions, feelings of love. I take your hands in mine. Kissing, hugging, loving. Until the climate reaches its peak. For both of us, heartbeat racing as we lose control. You grab me, with a tight hold. Water runs down our bodies in the form of sweat. I didn't mean to make you come, didn't mean to make you moan. I only just wanted to make you sweat, I only wanted to make you wet. Dasinga knew it was late, and the shift had long been over, and like I said, he knew he was fired, but it took a week or so, but he didn't fight it, because he left his post and drove the company vehicle without proper licenses. Dasinga knew that work in his field was more than plentiful, and he just looked for another job. Meanwhile, one day, Deke came to the bread and breakfast and said she was just visiting a college friend who lived around the corner and wanted to come by. She felt sorry about him being fired. She pulled up in a white Pontiac Fiero, and Dasinga met her. At the door. Hi, beautiful, blushing, she said, hi. Dasinga was curious, who do you know on this side of town? She said, an old college friend and, my boyfriend. Dasinga's heart sank deep within his chest, and then it was filled with anger, and the feeling was apparent to Decay. Outraged, Dasinga quickly calmed down for a minute as he observed Decay's facial expression. I'm not the kind of guy who shares the people I love, and I'm not finna start. I know that we never once mentioned if any one of us was dating someone else, so you didn't lie to me, but this shit cuts like a knife, so when you are single again, come see me, but until then, stay the fuck away from me. Dasinga stormed back into the house and was mad for a few hours, cursing her out in his mind. He wrote, never satisfied. Ladies, what is going on? Confused. About what you want. Is it so hard? So hard, to be pleased. That's why you're always on your knees. Praying for what? Something in vain, praying for a man, who's perfect. What about you? Can you fit those shoes? Finding a mate, who's lovely and kind. Have you searched your mind? Looking for a lover, but you don't share your emotions. Looking for a husband, but you're not caring. Oh, and selfish, that's another too. What's wrong with you? Want someone to comfort you at home, but as soon as one comes along, you found yourself another. There's something wrong, always complaining. And you wonder, why you're always alone. Now, I hear your words, saying he smokes, and is always at home. Another says, he's always gone, and gambles too much. Still another, he's too fat, and another, he's too short. You're never satisfied. What do you do? Escape to another race. I see the greed in your eyes, and the look on your face. If these shoes don't fit, why bother? 'Cause only a hit dog will holla. If I missed, why say shit? Forgotten about African pride. Truly never satisfied. There's not too many of us out here. Jail, drugs, got most of us. The player haters are killing us. Just to find love. Everything else will fall in place, find God, not religion. It will become better. That's what you say. We all have desires, hopes, and dreams. We fall short, trying to live above your means. We're never satisfied. What do we do? Escape to another race. I see the greed in your eyes. The look on your face. Forgotten about African pride. Truly, you are never satisfied. He wrote, wrong love. I thought it was you, thought it was true. I thought about it all, the day I made that fall. Yes, it was you. No, it wasn't true. It didn't take that long, but I guess I have to wait. Go on dates to find a perfect mate. That's the part I hate. But I guess if I need the real one, my search must go on to find the one sent from above. But you were simply the wrong love. One of the tenants calls out to him when he had finally calmed down, and he puts his pen and paper down. Dasinga, you have company. Coming down the stairs, he said. I'm not expecting anyone. Who is it? He looked up. Oh. It was Decay. She was sad, but she smiled. Can I talk to you just for a moment? He said, I guess. They went outside, and he leaned up against her car. What is it that you need? She looked him in the eyes. I do like you a lot, and I told my boyfriend. It was over, 'cause I already do like you a lot, and I don't want this to end. You make me laugh. And I feel good about myself when I'm with you, and I did it 'cause I think I do love you. Dasinga had mixed emotions of sadness, happiness, and joy, and gave her a big hug. We have known each other for just a little while, and I too feel as you do. I got mad that you were seeing someone else. I'm just glad you weren't here when you left, because I called you all kinds of names, thinking you were like the rest of the women that I have been trying to avoid since I've been here, and at this very moment, I realized I was wrong. You are not like them at all. I'm sorry. She smiled. And Dasinga continued, let's start all over. He reached out his hand. Hi, my name is Dasinga. A tear rolled down her face. Dasinga wiped the tears from her eyes as she smiled. Hi, my name is Deek.